Welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film and we explore its themes, its history, its filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker, directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Roca. I'm a voiceover artist, writer, producer, and host of numerous shows here in Los Angeles and over at Collider, doing a bunch of stuff as well. And usually when we do the intro, or Steve does the intro to the episode, he says the themes and blah, blah, blah. And I can't even tell you. This may be the most thematic film we would tackle, full of a bunch of hidden meanings, a bunch of illusions, a bunch of things to explore and explain and flesh out. And we may even be completely 100% wrong on a lot of these. Who knows?
Well, it's a lot of stuff. And not only that, but the all of these themes and illusions and ideas are controversial.
Yes.
And complicated. And understanding, like, well, what is the film's trying to say?
Yeah.
Is because there are a lot of people that take all sorts of different conclusions out of this film.
Yeah.
And it elicits strong feelings. And of course, the film we're talking about is Fight Club, 1999, David Fincher. And of course, it shouldn't surprise anyone that this was a Patreon pick. Brian Safferny, Matt Yund, and Stanley Daniel all thought that we needed to discuss Fight Club on the Cine-Files. And while I can think of a whole bunch of reasons why they might have said that, I'd rather hear their opinions.
Hey John and Steve, Matt from New York again. When I was first introduced to Fight Club by my brother towards the end of high school, it truly shook me. Never had I seen a movie so weird and entertaining and thought-provoking all at the same time. I became obsessed, watching it over and over, slowly stripping the layers to the point where my senior year I wrote an economics paper about the criticisms of consumer culture and later took a philosophy class entitled Plato, Descartes, and Fight Club. Though it seems like a quote-unquote guys movie full of testosterone and machismo on the surface, it has layers of depth you wouldn't expect. It's a rare movie that improves upon every viewing and cemented David Fincher as one of my favorite directors working today.
Hi, Steve. Hi, John. This is Stan Daniel from Louisville, Kentucky. I chose Fight Club as one of my Patreon picks for I see it as a standout film from 1999, which I believe to be a remarkable year in modern cinema. It's one of the most impactful films I've ever seen, for both good and ill. Initially, much of the satire was lost on me, while the themes of anti-consumerism still resonate today as much as they did 20 years ago. And honestly, who's not seduced by the looks, confidence, and swagger of Tyler Durden? Fight Club's exhilarating, cathartic, and at times difficult to watch even after many viewings. It's brilliant satire that can be easily misconstrued. It's not my favorite film ever, but it is certainly one of the coolest. Thanks for letting me be a part of the show.
And also this week, we want to do a special Cinephile shout out to Alicia from Venezuela. We hear you live in Chicago and that you're a huge fan of the show, and we really appreciate you listening and spreading the good word about the Cinephiles. So thanks, Alicia. This is a movie, this is one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
I've come back to it over and over and over again. And every time I watch it, I get more stuff and I get more amazed by the genius of this film.
Mm-hmm. I think it's his most artistic film that he's ever done as a filmmaker in terms of film technique, usage of film, the use of the medium. I think other films may be better overall, like Zodiac's an incredible film. Seven is a phenomenal film. But I think there's something about his work in this film that pushes the boundaries a little bit of what the medium can do.
This is my favorite of his.
Yeah.
Seven I find too hard. I think it's brilliant.
Oh, really?
But I don't want to watch it all the time.
Really?
No.
Oh, my God. I went through a period where I watched that thing over and over and over again. It just influenced me so much.
It's brilliant and powerful. Yeah. But I don't go like, hey, I feel like jumping into the world of Seven. And Zodiac I like a lot. And obviously there's Social Network and a lot of great films.
Social Network's great too.
But this one is the one that just speaks to me the most. Do you remember how you first came to it?
Yeah, I remember. I guess it would have to be in Tallahassee at Florida State, going to see it. And I think we went with some friends of ours who are probably still friends of ours now from Florida State to go see it. And I just remember, just loving this fucking movie when I was in the theater. I'm sorry to cuss so early in our podcast.
It's Fight Club, dude.
Well, yeah. And for those of you who are listening with kids or whatever, I apologize, but there will be some cussing in this. This just hit all the buttons for me. And I remember that experience so distinctly because I'd only been a few, maybe 2-3 years out of the service.
Oh, right.
I was still like pursuing acting at Florida State, pursuing possibly filmmaking, becoming a director maybe in my mind. All these things just kind of converge. Basically, that period from 96 to 2000 is full of a lot of really life-changing experiences in the film, in the theater rather, with film. And Fight Club, along with Matrix, along with Seven, were some of the most, and Pulp Fiction were some of the seminal films that really influenced me going forward in my life. And Fight Club is something that just, every once in a while, there are these man films, and they just hit all the buttons for me in a primal way. And I remember
a primal
feeling that.
movie.
Yeah, I remember feeling that walking out, and I couldn't wait to rush back in to see it again.
It's funny looking at it now, by the way. I'd never thought of the late 90s as this great era for film, but you just mentioned like Matrix, and there's Fight Club and Seven. The same year this came out as Magnolia and Being John Malkovich.
Right.
I mean, these are groundbreaking films that are really all of them challenging in very different ways.
Right.
For me, I was in LA. I saw it in the Cinerama Dome.
Oh.
I think I saw it opening night.
Oh, I'd love to see this in Ramadan.
And what was interesting is I was listening to the commentary track, and Ed Norton said he went to opening night at the Cinerama Dome and sat in the back. So I'm not sure I saw it opening night. I saw it pretty quickly after it opened.
Yeah.
But it's possible that Ed Norton was sitting behind me at the theater.
Could be.
And I remember just being blown away by this movie. And what's been funny doing the research, I just wasn't aware at the time that it wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
And that it got a very mixed critical response. Because for me, it was like, well, this was a thing of genius.
Yeah.
But it actually took till the DVD release that the movie started to become one of those films that we talked about a lot.
Yes.
That caught on later on.
I try to convince, and I agree with you. I do remember it not doing well, because it was one of these films that I was like upset that it wasn't doing better at the box office. I remember that distinct feeling, and I tried to convince as many people as possible that I knew in Tallahassee to go see this movie because it was so good.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I was working at the DVD job when this thing came out, and we worked on the DVD. So I remember going through this thing over and over again back in 2000.
Yeah.
And just being that was one of the ones where it's like, yeah, I'll do it again. Yeah, I'll do it again. Yeah, I'll do it was awesome.
And I worked on the Blu-ray version of this a few years later when the company that we had worked for got bought out.
Right.
And it was an extensive Blu-ray with a crap ton of special features and hidden Easter eggs throughout the whole Blu-ray that we had to test and retest. It was like months-long project.
Which, by the way, pissed me off your Blu-ray pissed me off in the last week because I just show me where the behind the scenes is. I don't want to like click through every weird thing to try to find. I just want to. I don't have time.
Try testing it.
I can imagine. Well, the funny thing about the Blu-ray is it opens up with the Never Been Kissed menu,
which is great.
And then that breaks apart and takes you in a Fight Club, which is just so. That's so funny.
And there's one more Drew Barrymore reference in the movie.
Oh, right.
Yes.
So let's talk a little about pre-production. Obviously, this comes from the book by Chuck, whose last name I can't really pronounce, but I should have like looked at the phonetic, but it's Poloniak or Poloniak.
Poloniak or Poloniak.
Yeah.
However you want to say. Chucky P. Chucky P is what I call him.
And what's so funny, I mean, the book came out in 96.
Yeah.
This comes out in 99. The book wasn't a big hit. It was really the movie that made the book, which I didn't really realize.
Yeah.
That Fox just found it. And at first they wanted Peter Jackson to do it.
What?
Yeah. And he was doing something else, Frightener, one of those things. And then the next person they went to is Danny Boyle.
Ooh, Danny Boyle would have been interesting coming
I
off
could
the train spot.
totally see Danny Boyle.
Yeah.
Fincher wanted to do it, but Fincher was pissed at Fox because of what happened on Alien 3.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, I don't ever want to work with Fox again.
Yeah.
Alien 3 is one of those movies where you're like, there was genius in it, and then not.
If he had been allowed to do his movie, who knows how it would have turned out.
That's
the studio interference was too much.
Because Fincher, and I just did, a little bit of background. I didn't realize he grew up about 6 miles away from me.
Yeah.
And that had he not moved to Oregon, he and I would have gone to the same high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's a couple years older than me, so he would have probably been a senior maybe when I was a freshman.
Okay.
Or maybe he would have just graduated. But they moved up to Oregon, and he's one of the guys that we talked about where 8mm film since he was a little kid, always wanted to do that. Ended up, what I didn't know, I knew he'd worked in visual effects. I didn't know he worked at ILM. He was on Return of the Jedi. He worked on Last Crusade. And then went off to, of course, make music videos and the famous Madonna videos. And that's what really got him noticed.
Right.
And then I went, those foreign propaganda films, and that's what led him to Alien 3, which was just a disaster for him. He didn't know he ever wanted to make a movie again.
Yeah.
Till he got the script for 7. And of course, 7 led to the game, which I haven't seen in a long time, but I like the game.
I like the game, yes. It's for me, it's his least accessible movie in terms of enjoyment. But I get it.
And obviously he worked with Brad Pitt before on Seven, and so it was a real natural to bring Brad Pitt in, and he had just had a not great film with Meet John Doe. Or Meet Joe Black. I mean,
Meet Joe Black, right?
Meet Joe Black. Meet John Doe is totally different.
Totally
film.
different film.
And I just found out who they wanted for the Ed Norton part.
Who's that?
Matt Damon.
Oh man. Damn. Well, I think they went the right route, though. But then again, this is Matt Damon right after Good Will Hunting, maybe 2 years after Good Will Hunting, so
Right
before
then.
Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
So it could have still worked when he was still kind of skinnier guy who could have played this kind of part. But I liked them going with the more intellectual.
I love Ed Norton.
With Norton, yeah.
And this is this moment where he's kind of, there was Primal Fear and People versus Larry Flint, and suddenly this guy is, who is this? And he is so interesting, particularly in this era. Really smart and really, willing to make unusual choices.
This is my favorite Ed Norton era, and also my favorite Brad Pitt era. He'll do great films. He'll be a great actor. He might win an Oscar someday, Brad Pitt. But this is my favorite period of Brad Pitt's career.
It is
late '90s.
It is uber Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Where it's just all the charisma and all of the weird energy, and just like there's nobody doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that there's a lot of different people working on the script, including Brad Pitt and Ed Norton. It sounds like they were really involved throughout the whole process, that it was a real collaborative situation between the three of them with Fincher.
Not a surprise. Norton has kind of got to be known, and I read a number of profiles on him rewriting scripts. He did that with Frida, because for Salma, because he was dating Salma at the time,
Right.
And he rewrote some of Larry Flint and he was dating Courtney Love, as well. So he's an interesting cat, Ed. He had a little run, and then he just shows up every once in a while.
Yeah.
To see him in a Jason Bourne movie was kind of heartbreaking because, yes, it's good work, but it's not that Ed Norton that you remember from the 90s with Primal Fear, like you mentioned in this film, and Larry Flint, and numerous other American History X, even.
Yeah, totally.
Like all this time, there's this great star and 25th Hour, and then it kind of fades away, and he's doing Hulk, or he's doing these small parts in other films. And thank God for Wes Anderson to bring him back back into our public consciousness more often. So
he's one of the ones where I wonder, what does he want?
Yeah.
Is he trying to be a movie star and no one's letting him? Is he enjoying, I work every once in a while with Wes Anderson or whoever on a little movie, or get a good paycheck from Jason Bourne?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He
I
could
have
be
no
script
idea.
doctoring too, without our knowledge.
He's a super smart guy.
He is a very smart guy.
So that's all the pre-production I have. I want to get into the movie, but I want to say something first, which is
Here we go.
no, it's short.
I don't know what he's going to say, people.
but normally, we've said many times, look, this is an old movie. We're going to spoil everything.
Oh, yes.
But this one in particular, this is one of those movies that has a massive twist. And because of it, like Sixth Sense would be another one, it's really fun to go back and see it the second time, knowing the twist, and try to understand the film in a new way. And so I want to start with the twist. I want to say it, because as we go through, I think one of the questions we have to ask throughout this film is, what the fuck is actually going on?
Right.
And the twist, of course, so this is the spoiler. This is your chance to go to Cine-Files.net, buy or rent the movie, watch the film, get to the end, and then you could come back and I'll give you this much time. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the movie.
Perfect.
Welcome back. The twist, of course, is that there is no Tyler Durden, that it is one person with a split personality, and the narrator, whose name we never get, has been everyone.
Well, there is a Tyler Durden.
There is,
He's just
right.
not a physical.
Well, and
creature.
there's all these people who know Tyler Durden, but when they
Yes.
see them, they're seeing Ed Norton.
Yes.
They never see Brad Pitt.
Right.
And that's really important, because everything about this movie is a little bit up for grabs with like, what was actually happening in this scene? So we start with some static and some scratching sounds, and we go right into the music. Dust Brothers. It's their first film.
Yeah.
And the music soundtrack is great.
Yeah, it is.
And we go through the weird neurons of, Ed Norton's brain, which was pretty fancy CG at the time. So much so they had a separate budget for it, because they were a little worried that they wouldn't bring this in under budget. And when they finally saw what they're doing, they're like, okay, you could do this.
He's great with his credits, by the way.
Oh.
The 7 credits are incredible. going backwards
on
the screen was brilliant.
No, he's a great visual stylist. And we're going out of the brain to the skin to the barrel of the gun, and there is Ed Norton with a gun in his mouth. That's a nice way to open a movie.
People are always asking me if I know Tyler Durden.
By the way, no one ever asks him that in the whole movie.
No, because he is Tyler Durden.
Exactly.
That's a great point. Did you know that with a gun barrel in your teeth, you only speak in vowels?
Well, I imagine so.
And then he has these, and again, this is a voiceover movie. I think this is one of the greatest voiceover films of all time.
Absolutely.
Without question.
This you can put up against Shawshank, what Morgan does in Shawshank. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's well, and the way that the voiceover is interacting with every scene, and the studio at first, they didn't want voiceover.
Oh, really?
They said, we don't think voiceover movies work really well. Don't do voiceover. Oh, no. I mean, that's what the whole... Yeah. Have you read the book, by the way?
No, I've never read the book.
It's really good, and it very much mirrors a lot of this.
Then,
yeah.
What's the point?
Fair. And then he has this other line of voiceover, which is...
That old saying, how you always hurt the one you love? Well, it works both ways.
Which is, first of all, a great line.
Yes.
Because it's saying, well, then that means you're hurting the people that you love.
Right.
And it's an even better line when it's himself.
Right.
Because one of the people he loves is Tyler Durden.
And the people you love hurt you.
Yeah.
And it's what he says there at the beginning gets mirrored back at the end of the film when we get to it. And he says something that is also in reverse. But go ahead.
Yep. And then we go through this CG. This is early CG. This is right around the same time in The Matrix, where we go down into the basement and we go into the van and we see the explosives, and all this is... And I remember seeing this in 99 and going, wow, this is really cool. The other movie that came out the same year is Three Kings.
Oh, yeah.
And Three Kings, it does similar stuff.
David
where
O.
it's
Russell,
these are some interesting filmmakers.
Paul Thomas Anderson, Spike Jonze, David O. Russell, David Fincher. These are all and they all feed off of the independent film movement from the early 90s.
Yep.
They all come into bear because the public's tastes have changed.
Yep.
And these people can now make their movies, and the studios recognize this. And it's brilliant.
Because without Tarantino, there's none of these people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. At first, he says it all has something to do with Marla Singer, and then he goes, no. We go immediately with a hard cut into Bob.
Yeah.
Bob had bitch tits.
Bob had bitch tits. But I will always remember that line till I die. I may mutter it on my deathbed. Who knows? But I say that line all the time.
And we're right into Meatloaf.
Yeah.
I mean, literally right into Meatloaf and his big bosoms.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love Meatloaf.
Yeah, Meatloaf's great.
I probably wouldn't necessarily want to get into a political discussion with him today.
Sure.
But that album, that was a big album.
Yeah, and this was around that time when he was trying to become an actual actor, become an actor, as opposed to that Rocky Horror stuff.
And he's great in this.
Yep.
He is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love there's this, I'm going to quote some of these VO lines because they're so good. Sure. Between these huge sweating tits that hung enormous, the way you think of gods as big. That is a brilliant, brilliant bit of writing.
No, wait. Back up. Let me start earlier. For 6 months, I couldn't sleep.
And this is going to be how this movie is going to work. You're not going to stay in a single narrative. You're going to jump back and forth in time. Right. This voiceover is going to pull you around. Mm-hmm. It's just fascinating.
With insomnia, nothing's real. Everything's far away. Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy.
You said you haven't really had insomnia.
I've never, and I was watching the film again before we recorded this, and I was thinking to myself, I know people who have it, and I pity people who have insomnia because I've been on runs where I don't sleep for a couple of days because of either work or shooting on the sets, and then going when I was at Florida State, they would shoot at night, the student films. So I would have to go to school all day, do the homework, do rehearsal for a play, then go right and shoot a film till 5 a.m. And so that ran a couple of times. So I get what insomnia and what he's talking about. Everything is distant, nothing feels real. And Ian suffers through insomnia, and I've known him for years. And he's talked about what that's like when he goes on these insomnia runs. And I have a few friends who go through it, and I just feel sorry for them because I could not exist in an insomnia. I would go insane, insane.
Well, that's literally what happens to our character and what
break.
happens to people. I mean, I've had insomnia, but not like this.
Right.
I mean, I've had a couple of days.
Sure.
Or
every weeks.
A few weeks of minimal sleep.
Yeah.
Where you're getting an hour or 2 or 3, and that'll mess you up.
Of course.
But he says 6 months he couldn't sleep. And everything, I like, this line, everything's a copy of a copy. And what do we see flash in? First little subliminal Tyler Durden appears and disappears.
Yeah.
And which is so crazy because it's Fincher is messing with film convention.
Yep.
There's this whole other thing happening. We go in again, our next CG shot, which is moving through the garbage. And he's talking about deep space naming rights, Starbucks and Microsoft. And this is going right into one of our themes we're going to deal with, as you brought up there many, and one of them is corporate culture and the labeling and naming of us by what we buy.
Right, and this is what was happening in the culture at the time, because corporations were starting to become more and more of a influential voice in our pop culture zeitgeist. You would hear, and yes, you do the. What do you do? The tie-ins, you do all the franchise. Of course, you do the tie-ins, but this was something else. They were addressing it because this was kind of happening throughout our culture. It was becoming louder and louder. Apple, Microsoft, all of that. We were having access to this. The idea of like, you have to have this car, you have to have this clothes, all of that was becoming really important to people coming on, and especially coming out of the 80s, and now it was really manifesting itself all over again in the late 90s, this idea of having to look a certain way in order to exude a certain kind of aura.
Yeah. Well, and one of the interesting things that they point out in the commentary track is basically all the product placement. All the time you see corporate logos, they're always negative.
Yeah.
It's in the garbage can, it's being lit on fire,
Yeah.
it's being destroyed. Like, they're not subtle about what they're doing.
Right.
We go into work. The boss is wearing a very nice cornflower blue tie.
I love that actor, by the way.
It's Zach Grenier.
He's always great playing like
He is
smarmy guy.
great. There's this line of,
You want me to deprioritize my current reports until you advise of a status upgrade?
Yeah.
and this is the thing about this movie. This is a comedy.
A black comedy.
A
but yes.
black comedy.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, there's a whole bunch of people who hate this film for political reasons on both sides.
Yes.
And one of the reasons is that they didn't get what was funny.
Yeah.
About these very serious, we're going to get into some serious stuff.
Yeah.
And it's going to handle them in a very funny way.
Yeah, I'm always amazed people take it too seriously, Steve. It's a movie. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there are other movies that I understand why you would take it too seriously. I get it. But this is all done from a place of humor, but also but intelligent humor. And that's what bothers me when people say they don't get it. Like, it unsettles me.
Yeah. I mean, to some degree, it's like, either you don't have a sense of humor at all, or you don't have a sense of humor. Your sense of humor has blind spots over certain areas that you're like, we shouldn't joke about that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of we shouldn't joke about that. I have very little of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, we should be able to joke about everything.
Yeah.
I'm a Jewish person. I like joke. Like the producers is jokes about Nazis.
Yeah.
I don't go like that's forbidden to joke about it, because in my mind, comedy is sometimes the biggest place to poke at, the big evils in the world.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Great comedy usually does that and makes you think at the same time.
Well, and that's certainly what this does, because we're going into a world where he walks through his apartment after sitting on the toilet with his IKEA catalog, and he walks through, and every single thing he walks by as his apartment fills up is named and built like it's part of a catalog.
Yeah.
He calls it the IKEA nesting instinct.
The Klipsk personal office unit, the Hovatrek home Exer bike, or the Yohaneshov sofa with the string green stripe pattern. Even the Rizlampa wire lamps of environmentally friendly unbleached paper. I'd flip through catalogs and wonder, what kind of dining set defines me as a person?
Have you had thoughts like this?
I will say that I've never had that thought, but I've always had thoughts of like, what should I get to make it look like I know what I'm talking about, or I know I have some kind of sense of fashion or style, some kind of style.
Yeah.
I usually, but like when you're younger, because you're still figuring it out, you have those questions. But as you get older, you settle in, you understand what your style is. Other people,
I don't understand what my style is.
Well, other people, no, I can tell what your style is from being in your house. Absolutely.
Well, yes.
Because we're talking furniture, right?
Yes,
That's what
furniture.
he's talking about.
I definitely have a style.
You do.
Absolutely, no question. In terms of clothes stress me out.
Right, but
like that makes me very nervous.
Right, but there's not really anything that he's talking about with clothes, because it's all like khakis and shit. So there's no real extension in his mind.
Well, no, but that's part of the whole corporate what these purchases I make define me.
Sure.
You know, and to one degree or another, I've definitely had these thoughts.
Right.
I remember having a conversation with a friend. It was a time when I was thinking about buying a new car. Oh, and it was when I had lost all the weight. So I was really skinny. And I'm talking to a friend, and I was talking about what, you know, this kind of car. And all I think about a car is like what it does and what it's like on the inside. And he said, well, now that you're thinner and you're dressing better, maybe, you know, you need to find a car that looks good for you.
Yeah.
That looks, and it was like, it had never occurred to me how a car looks, of what it says about me from the outside.
Yeah.
I never even thought about it.
Yeah.
And then that got me stressed out.
Well, it's a fair point. I mean, I get so much shit from my Prius from women I date.
Really?
Yes. Some women see me in a Prius and they're just like, nah, it's not cool. It's not. It's a Prius. It's economical. Blah blah blah. There are people who judge you for the things that you own or use. Of
course there are.
And it's always unsettling to me because I'm not built that way. So it's weird to confront that when it happens. I almost feel apologetic about it, and I'm just like, well, no, because
That's
I
your
save
car.
so much money.
Well, and it's good for the environment.
It's great for the
And also, it's a car.
It's car, and it's fast as fuck when I need it to be.
It's such a weird thing, and yet this is, again, we're talking about the themes of this movie. What defines you, and what this movie is going to do is it's going to say, let's strip away everything,
Right.
down to the essence, to the bottom.
Right, because the surface is a lie. You know,
Right.
just because if I drove a Duster, a black Duster with a loud engine, just because it turns you on in the moment as a girl, when
Certainly would turn me.
well, I was right. If I'm going on a date,
I mean, I'm just
picturing.
picturing you in that car right now.
That's right. There you go. With my sunglasses on. And she sits and she enjoys the ride. But then when we get there, I'm a complete asshole. Then, you know, what's the point, right? So it's those kinds of things. You get the veneer of, oh, this guy's kind of cool. But then you find out what the truth is beneath. And so those are things you confront all the time in life.
Well, yeah, and for a lot of people, they don't go a lot deeper than the surface.
No, and
They never really get past that.
that's a really unsettling thing to confront.
It is. It is. I mean, I love the line, by the way, that you know something was made by honest, simple, indigenous people of whatever,
Yeah, whatever.
or of wherever. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
But he can't sleep, so what's he got to do? He goes to the doctor, and he says, "I wake up in strange places. I don't know where I am." And he wants a drug, and he has the list of drugs in his head, and he wants and he says, and the doctor just goes, "No, you just need healthy, natural sleep," which medically, by the way, is true.
Yeah.
Is things like people who take Ambien all the time, they're not getting all the stuff they need to get out of sleep. But if you can't sleep, you can't sleep.
Right.
And he tries to tell the doctor, "I'm in pain." You know, and the guy says, "You want to see pain? Go see the guys with testicular cancer." And right at that moment, another Tyler Durden pops up.
Yep. It makes me think about, as I was watching the movie again today, it made me think like, how long has Tyler Durden been gestating inside him? Because this idea that he wakes up in places he doesn't know where he is, or he's in places he doesn't remember how he got there, doesn't remember like Tyler may have already been laying the groundwork before Tyler shows up in the movie.
There's no question to me that he's laying the groundwork because he has been working as a projectionist and as a waiter in
Holy
hotels
shit,
this
good
whole
point.
time.
Yeah.
And we don't know when that started.
Right.
The whole time he hasn't been sleeping and he can't remember. He's been out doing other jobs with Tyler Durden. And we're going to get to a good one in a moment, by the way, which is evidence of this.
Making soap and shit, yeah.
And so and this immediately, now we're in the support group. And this is the thing about this film structure, is it moves perfectly from, you know, go to the support group, boom, we're in the support group.
It's stream of consciousness.
Yep, it's exactly what it is.
Because we're in his mind.
And we start with this guy talking about his wife.
She had her first child last week, a girl, with her new husband. And thank God, you know, I'm glad for her. Because she destroyed.
Oh my God.
And this is one of those scenes where it is so sad and so true and so funny to watch this guy try to explain why he's really happy for his wife who remarried someone else and just had her first daughter.
Yeah.
And he can't have kids, and that's great. And he bursts into tears.
By the way, the guy has one scene, and he works all the time now. I see him everywhere. And what's great is the casting is as great at this too, Steve, because he does a great job with that. And then the guy who gets up to console him, the guy who runs, is such a great hangdog face.
Yep.
It's just brilliant. You guys give me courage. Have you ever, last question, have you ever been to any of these groups? Have you ever gone to a
sure.
group? Really?
Yeah. Well, no, I've been to AA meetings.
Okay. Were you an AA? Are you an alcoholic?
No.
I've never known this.
No. Well, you've been with me drinking quite a bit. So
Well, yeah.
whether or not I am an alcoholic, no, I was with my father-in-law.
Oh, gotcha.
We went with him.
Gotcha.
For
Support him.
and I've also been to Al-Anon meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
you never gone for yourself?
No.
In any of these meetings?
No.
I have.
Wait, hold on.
Have you?
I'm thinking. No.
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to get deep. We're going to get deep.
Yeah. No.
I've been to a Debtors Anonymous.
Oh, wow.
Back when I was
Yeah,
going
yeah.
through a lot of shit back in a few years ago. These groups are as depressing and kind of, depending on the group, can be uplifting, but there is a lot, like you think you've done a lot of shit. And when you get in those groups, you're like, Jesus Christ. Like it's really, it kind of serves two purposes, to give you a kind of perspective, but also show there is support there.
So by the way, when my dad was sick, I went to Families of ALS.
Okay.
So I've been to that kind of one.
Okay.
But I haven't been where it was my thing.
Right.
So much.
Okay. I've got some groups you can go to.
I've got a lot of things. I'm sure there's a lot to apply. Testicular cancer is one I'm not appropriate for.
No, good
and-
segue, Steve.
And he gets up to, but that's where Ed is. He's sitting in the background
Yeah.
of a meeting of people that have a disease that he doesn't have, and of course now they have it's time for the private share, which is something I've never seen in groups. I don't know if that's a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's more acting.
But and he gets, paired up with Meatloaf, the big moose, and I love he describes eyes already glossy with tears.
Oh, shrink wrapped. Shrink wrapped with tears.
Shrink wrapped with tears.
Brilliant.
And he gets pulled into those big bitch tits. By the way, the studio did not like the size of his nipples.
What?
They actually made two whole different suits, one with big nipples and one without big nipples. And Fincher fought for the big nipple ones.
Oh God,
Movie making is weird.
Studios.
And
Our surveys say the big nipples do not work.
don't like the big nipple. I mean, it's a really weird scene.
Oh, of course
and the
it is.
casting of
It's a
Meatloaf
weird
is
movie.
weird. It is weird.
Yeah.
And his first reaction is people expressing emotions like this make me go all rubbery.
And then something happened. I let go. Lost in oblivion. Dark and silent and complete. I found freedom. Losing all hope was freedom.
And he cries.
Yes. Why? Because he's been judging everybody else. So he finally plays a hand. And in playing a hand, he realizes I've been judging because I've been afraid to open up. And I find that throughout my life with a number of people who act above it or judge around, and then the second they actually open up, they're a bucket of tears, And so you're like, yeah, this is what it's all about. So
Well, and yet he's doing it. I think it's the total anonymity that's helping him.
yes,
do it.
of course,
And the
because he
fact
doesn't have
that
the guts to do it honestly.
Well, yeah, because this has nothing to do with that. He's actually suffering.
Yeah.
Is that he is able to just let all those emotions out because, in fact, no one knows what he's talking about.
Right.
He's not expressing, I have insomnia, I feel disconnected, I have major daddy issues, which we're going to get into in the course of the film.
Yeah.
He just weeps.
Yeah.
But weeping allows him to sleep.
Babies don't sleep like this. I love that line.
And he says he became addicted. And I love he walks in. Again, Fincher's just incredible craftsmanship of he comes in, he looks at the schedule, he takes the schedule of group meetings. Man, this church or wherever it is, they have a lot of meetings there. And she's like, tuberculosis, and we go into this montage.
If I didn't say anything, people always assume the worst.
Welcome, Travis. Welcome, friend.
They cried harder. Then I cried harder.
Well, suffering is suffering, right? The condition
To
is
some
the
degree.
condition, but suffering is suffering. And that's what he's looking for because he's suffering.
Yeah.
So he seeks connection with other people who are suffering.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stuff, the stuff is always different.
Oh, sure,
Like
of
what you're
course.
experiencing with
Specificity.
testicular cancer versus some blood parasite
Right.
is different. But that doesn't matter because when he goes in and doesn't say anything, what he says is people always assume the worst. And I love, by the way, just the details, the inserts of coffee cups and donuts and, all of that.
The dingy rooms.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Steve, this is an interesting too because this whole thing is an exploration of it's a statement on society. Because in 1999, we are just now becoming more talkative or open about mental health stuff in 1999.
Right.
More about suffering. Men are being seen as like being able to talk about their suffering when we're supposed to keep it in. Like all of a sudden it's okay to talk about it. And so this is such a timely film for what's happening and what's about to happen in our culture. It's brilliant.
But the other thing about it, though, too, is that there's a weird quarantine of suffering that's happening because it's like none of these people are with their families.
Right.
You know, there aren't people, they have to go to this anonymous place in this dingy room to have this sort of sad meeting with the only people that understand them. Right. I'm not knocking support groups in any way. I don't mean that. I mean, they're amazing things for people who need them. But there's something about the way it happens in this movie that's isolating and this is sort of the conspiracy of the movie is one of the things the movie is going to do is make the Fight Club really seductive.
Yeah.
And feel vital and alive in a way that these support groups do not.
Well, yeah, because it's all through Tyler's or through Norton's mind, the narrator's mind. So he's got to make the support groups seem suspect, but the thing he creates is more incredible.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
He goes into some guided meditation and he walks into his cave, his nice ice cave. It's a weird movie.
Spirit animal.
Sees a spirit animal, which is a penguin, and it says, slide.
Every evening I died, and every evening I was born again, resurrected.
And what has he created? He's created a whole bunch of relationships based on lies.
Yeah.
Bob loved him because he thought he didn't have testicles.
Being there, pressed against his tits, ready to cry. This was my vacation. And she ruined everything.
This is cancer, right?
We've talked a lot about entrances.
Yeah, man.
This is a fantastic one.
Yeah.
Helena Bonham Carter walking into testicular cancer, smoking that cigarette, saying, "This is cancer, right?" That is amazing.
What an interesting choice, Bonham Carter, too, because she had done like these British films, these like period pieces. I didn't know she had this gear, and she's incredible in this movie. Never sexier than she is in this movie, and never more powerful, in my opinion, as an actress. Very good actress, obviously, but really powerful in this movie.
Can I tell you the first two people they wanted?
Oh,
you're going to be really happy with what they did.
Oh, okay.
The first one, Janine Garofalo.
Oh my God, no!
The second one, Reese Witherspoon. I could kind of see
Reese. Yeah. I was afraid you were going to say Paltrow.
No, it was not Paltrow. Although she was in Seven.
She was.
Yeah.
But she's virginal in Seven. She's angelic in Seven.
What Helena Bonham Carter does is amazing because she is this weird entity that comes into this space and just owns it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she comes in and she's willing to be the subject of this whole situation. And I enjoy that.
And of course, our narrator is just struggling with this. She doesn't have testicular cancer.
Well, he says she's my window because she's a fake. She's a tourist.
Right.
And so her lie mirrors my lie, exposes my lie. Right.
Yeah. And then he can't enjoy it, which is really funny because it's like, your whole thing is based on a lie.
Yeah.
You are feeling like you're relating to real humans.
Sure.
But you're not.
No, because you're using them to help yourself.
Yeah.
Her lie reflected my lie. And suddenly, I felt nothing. I couldn't cry. So once again, I couldn't sleep.
We go into another support group and we meet Chloe.
Well, I'm still here, but I don't know for how long. That's as much certainty as anyone can give me. But I've got some good news. I no longer have any fear of death.
Just like the guy that talked about his wife, Chloe gets up and talks about she doesn't know how long she has to live and that she just wants to have sex one more time. And she's on screen for 40 seconds and come 100% memorable.
Yeah, and I love it, Steve, because it's honest, isn't it? Like we talk about cancer and everyone talks about it in these like really soft and angelic terms. My father died of cancer, so I can say this without offending anybody, but like you hear this stuff like it's this, they're such heroes and they're warriors. But there's like everything else, there's a human side to it. And the human side to it is what Chloe is saying is like, I just want to get laid before I die. Just one more time. I want to feel physical pleasure before I leave this earth. And the same guys who are crying about testicular cancer is because their balls have been taken off and they feel less like a man. She wants to feel like a woman and fuck. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I love the honesty of the moment they have to. And when she leans into the mic and speaks loudly into the mic is even more brilliant.
I have pornographic movies in my apartment and lubricants and amyl nitrate.
Thank you, Chloe.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And what makes it so horrible and sad is there's no one there for her. Nope. No one goes volunteers.
No, they all like put their eyes to the ground.
They're all feeling awkward and uncomfortable. And it's so here she comes to the support group and speaks her truth. And we know that Chloe dies in the movie.
Yes, we do later.
I bet she didn't have sex.
Maybe not.
I hope she did. I really feel for her.
Yeah.
She makes such a strong impression on me.
That could be a side business. I don't know.
Jesus.
You said we could talk about anything. All right, go ahead.
I didn't say I wouldn't have a reaction.
Fair. Fair.
We go back into guided meditation. He goes back into his cave. He looks for a spirit animal.
Yeah.
And there's Marla.
Yeah.
Slide.
Fucking shit up.
Yeah. He finally talks to her.
But why do you think she's there, Steve? This is a good question. Why do you think she's there?
Oh, because she has...
why is she his spirit animal, though, in that vision?
Well, let me answer. So she's there because she has invaded his private space.
Right.
Is she, and I would say through this movie, she is his spirit animal.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that he knows that she's his spirit animal.
Yeah.
The other thing, by the way, about this film is that not only is all the who's doing what with Tyler Durden unreliable, on some level, everything's unreliable.
Yeah.
We don't really know exactly what sequence things happened in.
He's definitely an unreliable narrator.
Absolutely. And he goes to talk to her and says, we have to talk. And I love that she just keeps overflowing the coffee she's filling.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And they end up, it's time for your group, your private share or whatever it is. And he accuses her of, you're a faker, you're a tourist. He saw her at melanoma, testicular cancer. And her response is, I saw you practicing this, Rupert.
Complete emasculation.
Yeah.
Even the way she says Rupert, because she knows it's not his real name.
So, by the way, the names are from two places.
Oh.
One is Planet of the Apes is Cornelius. And all the other names are Robert De Niro characters, Travis and Rupert.
Oh, my God.
And
Rupert Pupkin, of course.
And they were talking about the connection between this movie and Taxi Driver.
Wow.
By the way, the other movie that they really related this to is another one that we did, which is The Graduate.
Yeah, of course.
Because
underwater.
And it's all of the younger generation rejecting the values of the older generation in a manner that is ambiguous at best.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's a really fascinating because they don't feel alike.
Right.
Graduate and Fight Club, they don't feel alike at all.
Yeah.
But thematically, they maybe are.
Absolutely.
And there's this great moment as they're talking, as they're having their private, moment where he says,
When people think you're dying, man, they really, really listen to you instead of just
waiting for their turn to speak.
So she does exactly what he says that people don't do when they think you're dying, but that he likes because she actually understood him. And that connection is right there. But he tells her, I can't cry with another faker present. They go outside, and what are we going to do? Let's split up the nights.
You take lymphoma and tuberculosis.
You take tuberculosis. My smoking doesn't go over at all.
Okay, good, fine. Testicular cancer should be no contest, I think.
Well, technically, I have more of a right to be there than you. You still have your balls.
You're kidding.
I don't know. Am I?
We head off to the laundromat. She grabs some clothes, walks right out into traffic, and walks right into a place to sell the clothes, like a secondhand store. And they start to argue about who wants bowel cancer. And there's a great shot of just the reaction shot of the woman behind the counter going, what the hell's going on?
And she's sliding. She's grabbing those jeans. She's going to her money. She's she is sliding through her life. And that's what she's showing him.
Well, here's a thought I just had.
Yeah.
Like Tyler Durden, she doesn't care about the rules.
No.
I wonder if Marla inspires Tyler to some degree.
Maybe.
Like him meeting this woman and going, oh, I wish I could be more like that.
Well, I think we meet the people we're attracted to at certain points of our lives because they somehow fit whatever the hell we're looking for better or worse.
So they come up with the deal, and they even exchange phone numbers. And he asks her one last question as a bus passes in front of her. We don't get the answer to the question, and off we're onto some planes.
You wake up at SeaTac, SFO, LAX, Pacific, Mountain, Central. Lose an hour, gain an hour.
Check-in for that flight doesn't begin for another 2 hours, sir.
This is your life, and it's ending 1 minute at a time.
And we don't know this is before, this is after.
Yeah.
We don't know. We know that he's traveling all the time. And again, he describes sort of you wake up in all these different places and it's like the insomnia. Where are you? An hour before, an hour behind, different locations, different hotels. And then he says,
If you wake up at a different time, in a different place, could you wake up as a different person?
and who goes by on the moving sidewalk in the other direction? It's Tyler Durden.
Yep.
How long has he been Tyler Durden?
A while, I would imagine.
We don't,
but he's not aware of it.
He's never met the man.
No, he's never met the man.
But like he might be waking up in Chicago, doing his work during the day, and then going to be Tyler Durden all night.
Yeah.
And we don't really know.
Everywhere I travel, tiny life, single serving sugar, single serving cream, single pat of butter, shampoo conditioner combos, sample packaged mouthwash, tiny bars of soap. The people I meet on each flight, they're single serving friends.
I love that line. And right when that happens, by the way, and this is the other evidence that that Tyler Durden's been around, is he's looking at the welcome video from the hotel where they're all the waiters. Brad Pitt's on the right.
Yes.
So Brad Pitt has been working long enough to be in this video.
Possibly.
Or it's not there at all.
Yeah, or it's not there at all.
Who knows?
Yeah. Because it's seeing himself. He would be seeing himself.
Yeah.
Logically.
And then we have a line that's really important in the film because it gets echoed many times, which is his...
On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0.
This is going to come back a lot. And what we're looking at is one of these wrecked cars that's burnt up, and the fat has burned to the seat. It's pretty darn gross. Melted human fat is going to be a thing we're going to come back to multiple times in this film.
Which is excess.
Yeah.
It's
good
excess.
point.
Yes.
Good point.
That's what I mean. These things are all over the film.
No, this movie is about a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that his job is to examine the wreckage. It's his own wreckage. It's what he's trained to do.
Yep.
Examine these car accidents, but these car accidents are wreckage. He himself is a wrecked person examining his own wreckage through the whole movie.
Well, and he's seen the end of the value system.
Right.
Like the belief in all of the IKEA and the products and
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
And well, it's all going to end up with just, fat rendered down into something. Like
Yeah,
that's
right,
all. That's the
exactly.
place we're all heading.
And the LCD of it, the lowest common, like, is it worth it to fix it versus taking the loss?
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Can I just keep existing
Absolutely
as
true.
I am without addressing the wreckage of my life?
Yeah.
That's what these companies do. Can we keep making these cars without addressing the wreckage
Yes.
and just pay people off?
Well, and that is what life is, a cost benefit analysis.
Of course it is.
How much do I put into this? Until
Hey, Cine-Files fans, we educate the fuck out of you right now. Ain't we? All right, let's keep going.
There's a reason that you're going to patreon.com/Cine-Files.
That's right.
And then what's really interesting is we've been hearing his voiceover this whole time.
Yeah.
And he's talking about this equation of whether or not cars are going to do a recall. And we move right into a scene on the plane. And in fact, it isn't voiceover. He's talking to this woman next to him. And I love her reaction. Is like,
Are there a lot of these kinds of accidents?
You wouldn't believe.
Which car company do you work for?
and his response is,
A major one.
but what he's thinking about at this moment is,
Every time the plane banked too sharply on takeoff or landing, I prayed for a crash or a midair collision. Anything.
as soon as he has that thought, we see a midair collision. It is shocking and loud and powerful and super, super scary.
Yeah.
And then there's no crash.
Yeah.
And he's talking to someone else. And it's Tyler Durden.
And that's what happened. Tyler has shown up. The plane crash is Tyler showing up in his mind.
Yes, absolutely.
We had seen him across the street, and now he's kind of hit that wall, mental break, where Tyler shows up. And for him, the mental break is the simulation of a plane crash.
And by the way, we have no idea what actually happened. Was he sitting? Was there an empty seat next to him?
Sure.
Was there a person next to him and he's just having this conversation in his head?
Did he freak that woman out and she left?
Who knows?
So now he's talking to this guy.
And Tyler Durden is reading the important information of what to do when you are in the exit row on a plane. And it's very serious. And what they talk about, and by the way, I have thought about this on almost every plane I've ever taken since seeing this movie.
Yeah, of course.
Which is the idea of the illusion of safety, which is that the big reason that they go through all the safety lecture at the beginning is to make you feel like there's a plan.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, there was just the Southwest thing where they did they did actually have to deal with oxygen masks and landing the plane safely, and it really works. So I'm not saying that it's all bullshit.
Sure.
But I love that, pointing out the pictures in that brochure. It's like,
Emergency water landing, 600 miles an hour. Blank faces, calm as Hindu cows.
it talks about sucking on oxygen. Well, that just gets you high.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our narrator asks him what he does, and he says, why? So you can pretend like you're interested? Interestingly enough, they have the same briefcase.
Yes, this time watching the movie, that's the first clue for me that I was like, if I had watched it for the first time, I should have caught it. That they had
There's
the same
so many.
briefcase. Yeah.
People are always asking me if I know Tyler Durden. I mean, right from the beginning, we have these clues. They're not subtle, actually, but I didn't get it the first time I saw it. No way. He says that he sells and makes soap, says his name, and then immediately goes into the recipe for napalm.
Yeah.
One can make all kinds of explosives using simple household items. Really? If one was so inclined.
And our narrator's response is, you are by far the most interesting single-serving friend I've ever met.
And this is maybe my favorite exchange.
My favorite line in the movie.
Yeah.
Because there's a pause, and Tyler's just staring at him, and he starts to explain.
To have this thing, everything on a plane is single serving, even the...
Well, I get it. It's very clever. How's that working out for you?
What?
Being clever.
Boo, it's brilliant.
How's that working out for you being clever is something I say to myself all the time. All the time.
Fair.
Particularly when I'm writing and I come up with some particularly clever thing and I go, because frequently clever is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not the real stuff. You were just being clever.
Right.
How's that working out for you?
It's a great exchange. But also the irony, I mean, the symbolism of him making soap, right? It's to clean. Soap is to clean. He's cleaning this fucker's mind. He's trying to clean this guy's mind, to clean this guy's life. That's what he's trying to do to himself. He's trying to clean out all the bad shit.
Well, and to take the metaphor further, what is the main ingredient of the soap? Human fat.
Yeah, human fat.
And what else is he going to use human fat for? For the bombs to clean the world.
Yeah.
He wants to use the detritus of human existence to scrub clean the world of civilization.
Yep.
That's what this movie is going to go to. But right now, he's really asking the question of, when I go out of this aisle, do I give you the ass or the crotch?
It's great.
And I just love, because he gives him the ass, then when he goes by the stewardess and he gives him the crotch, you notice it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, because this is clearly on purpose.
Yep. I never give the crotch.
It's all geometry.
Yeah.
Whichever gets me by easier, that's what I'll do.
I try to do the side. I try not to go either way.
Yeah, well,
so it's not to offend.
Yeah, well, but there's a lot of logistics there. I try not to offend. Well, and as a really big guy, I'm very aware of.
Understood.
But sometimes you got to, it's a narrow space, and I'm wide. I got to get through it how I got to get through it. I would say, excuse me.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's kind of you.
We're off the plane, and he can't get his luggage.
Right.
Because it was vibrating. And there's a great speech about, most of the time it's an electric razor, but 9 times out of 10, but 1 time out of 10, it's a dildo. And of course, and I love that he says,
of course, it's company policy never to imply ownership in the event of a dildo. We have to use the indefinite article, a dildo, never your dildo.
Once again, exposing the corporate legalese so you don't get sued.
Right. And we hear that he says he had everything in his luggage, all his designer, whatever it is. Here's my question for you.
Yeah.
What happened to the luggage?
It's a good question. I think it was just taken. I think it never showed up.
I think this is because he is coming home to a apartment that is blowing up.
So he knows he's got to get rid of all this stuff.
He is getting rid of all his stuff.
Yeah.
He planned for the apartment to blow up.
Good point. He did, yes.
He definitely did. And so it seems to me, and this is the flight on which he met Tyler Durden.
Right.
So in his head, in the craziness that is his head, there's some plan hatching where he is trying to strip away all his stuff.
Right.
So losing the luggage has to be on purpose. My next question is what was vibrating? This is a man who is going to build bombs to blow up buildings.
Right. So if it had been something to build a bomb, they'd have found this guy, right? Unless he's been traveling as Tyler Durden this whole time.
Yes. And what is Tyler Durden? What's like the second thing Tyler Durden tells him about? How to build napalm.
Right.
Out of human fat.
Right.
Like, so we have a vibrating suitcase, a guy who's literally blowing up his apartment as we speak.
Yeah.
We have a discussion about bomb making, and what was right before he met Tyler Durden, his fantasy about a plane exploding.
Yeah.
I really want to know what might have been in that suitcase.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on there.
Yeah, and maybe it was bombs and stuff, and maybe they wanted to, and then they get his address, they go to his address, but his place is blown up.
Right.
So who knows?
Well, and again, we have an unreliable narrator.
Yeah,
so
we
don't
do.
know. I mean, like, because we see Tyler Durden jump into a car and steal a car.
Mm-hmm.
So that could mean A, that he just imagined that, and there was no car theft.
Right.
That could mean B, that he stole a car. I mean, we have no idea what really happened here.
That's true.
So we head home, and as we said, his apartment is blown up. And I love that we see all the stuff on the ground, like the yin yang table, and the line a fridge full of condiments and no food.
Yeah,
which is first of all a very typical bachelor thing to have, and second of all is really a man who owns all these accessories and has no life.
Yeah,
it is like my soul is empty. It is just I'm just hanging exterior stuff on it, but there's nothing there. It seems really clearly symbolic. Yeah. And he needs somewhere to stay. And we kind of hear that, the pilot light might have let a little gas into it, and that led to this explosion. I love, by the way, he describes his apartment building as a filing cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
Concrete filing cabinet. Talk about dehumanizing. He needs somewhere to stay. And what does he find? Marla's card.
Yeah.
Gets on the phone, calls Marla. The moment, and as he's doing this, he's imagining the apartment blowing up. The moment she answers is the moment that in his mind the apartment blows up.
Yeah.
And he hangs up the phone. What do you think that means?
So the apartment blows up while he's there on the phone?
No, he's imagining the apartment. We're seeing in like sort of the flashback
because he's
CG
talking
stuff.
about
He's
it.
talking about the gas and this and this and this.
Well, this is the second break, right? Isn't it? Because she's coming in to basically blow up what he had his own existence, his own mental existence as well, what he had constructed. Just as he's about to construct this Tyler and narrator dual life, she's the explosion of all of it.
See, I would put it, I think that's, because of course we don't know. But my interpretation would be that what he is doing between the suitcase and this apartment is destroying all connection of himself to the past life. He's cutting all the lifelines.
Okay.
And I think Marla is a lifeline.
Oh.
And so is that if he talked to her at that moment, he might go see her. And
gotcha.
If he goes to see her, then he can't go be Tyler Durden.
So that's Tyler Durden then doing the explosion to stop him from talking to her.
Yeah. Yeah, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And so, of course, who does he then decide to call? Is his friend, the soap manufacturer, Tyler Durden.
Who's eating a big bowl of cereal, I would imagine.
Or chips or something. By the way, that was the last take.
Oh.
They'd done a whole bunch of takes with nothing in his mouth, and then Brad Pitt said, hey, why don't I just eat something?
It's great. It works so good.
And he says, you're not going to believe this? And we cut to the bar, which we start with, could be worse, a woman could cut off your penis. Which is obviously like a Bobbitt sort of reference.
Yeah, right.
Which, was fortunately way back in the past now.
Yeah. But also it's a reference to what the threat Marla is
exactly
to this thing that he's creating. Yeah.
Exactly. Is that because Marla is the enemy of Tyler.
Yes.
And again, it also is related to the importance of masculinity. We've got testicular cancer where people have their balls cut off.
Yes.
And now we have the idea of a woman cutting off your penis.
Emasculating you, yeah. Exactly.
Literally emasculating you. Yeah. And this is one of the things about this film is that this film is also a movie about what does it mean to be a man and what is masculinity. And I think it has a lot to say in this area. And I think where people get... I was thinking about how to talk about this exactly, but I think where we get messed up is by trying to say that people saying either that the Fight Club is the truth and this is what men should be, or saying that Fight Club is exactly what is wrong with men and this is what men shouldn't be. I don't think it's either of those things.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's either of those things either.
Yeah, I think what this is presenting is some aspects of masculinity.
Yes.
And watching them go way too far.
Yes.
And that because there's this phrase that we hear a lot today, which is toxic masculinity, which is a phrase I do not like. And I don't like it for the same reason I don't like, there's a controversy about whether or not we should say Islamic fundamental terrorism, linking Islam and terrorism. And people who like the phrase will say, well, look, that's what it is. The ISIS and Al-Qaeda, these are fundamentalist religious groups, and that their religion is motivating towards terrorism, and therefore this is an accurate statement. And people who don't like that phrase will say, well, then you're lumping the 1.8 billion Muslims in the world with a small percentage, and that it is hurtful and insulting and divisive to make some secular Muslim living in Indonesia feel like he's somehow connected to this radical group that is killing people.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't like about the term toxic masculinity is you've got half the population who are masculine,
right?
And there's this feeling of like, well, the problem is your masculinity, and I don't think that's quite what I think is my feeling about it is any ideology or any trait taken to an extreme is toxic. You know, is that whether it's your Catholicism, whether it's your whatever it is, if you your communism, your anything you're taking to the it's us or them mentality, that's toxic.
I guess. I mean, I don't know if I 100% agree because I understand the term and I know what it applies to. And I guess that's in the same thing with Islamic fundamental terrorism. I know what it applies to, but I don't, when I hear Islamic fundamental terrorism, I don't think of all the Islamic people. I think of the people who carry out that kind of terrorism who are also of Islamic faith, who pervert it. Just like the Christians did in the Crusades. They pervert that, or sometimes Christians do now to use it to judge people who are gay or who don't do what they think they should do in life. I think there's toxicity all over the place, and attaching toxicity
I do too.
means the worst parts of it. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, I don't necessarily rail against the term. I understand the term, but it's a weird place to be in because sometimes these people who have issues with these phrases are because they fear the lowest common denominator, which is a majority of people won't do that extra effort mentally to understand the separation when you use that term. So
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point because like my feeling about it, and we'll get into it more in the film, is like, I just don't like things that are restrictive or prostrictive, which means that I don't think you should say this is what a man should be.
Sure.
Because men are all different things.
Yes.
And I don't think that you should say this is what a man should not be, restricting or prostricting. And I think that, saying that there are elements of some men that can be more aggressive or more physical, that's okay. Well, we're going to get into this.
And here's the thing, because the genesis of that term is when men take it too far and become abusive physically or abusive verbally or sexual harassers or sexual assaulters. That I understand. But I don't think it's saying masculinity is bad. It's saying
those
push
people's
too far.
Well, and also those people's interpretation of what masculinity means.
Yes,
because there's like, have you heard about this? This is a just recent thing of
the incels.
Incels,
yeah,
fucking crazy.
Do you want to explain it real quick?
Well, I haven't researched this, but my understanding is that there's a group of people who believe that sex is owed to them, and that celibacy is wrong, and therefore women should or must have sex with them, or some crazy fucking thing like that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So maybe I have to turn around to this toxic masculinity phrase. That's toxic.
That is toxic, and that's what toxic masculinity covers is this feeling of righteousness from the male side that they can take advantage or do as they please because it's some ham-handed and misguided way of feeling like they have power, when in fact they don't, because most times that comes from a feeling of a loss of power. And the incel is the same thing. I can't get you by my normal way of, I don't have any game. And so I'm going to create a group of people who don't have any game and don't have an ability to talk to a woman or seduce a woman or like have some kind of interaction with a woman that she would find you attractive. So we're going to float out this theory that no, women owe us sex. And that's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
It's stupid.
Well, it all goes to this. And this is, again, something the movie is sort of looking at is I have this pain. That pain is your fault. In some way.
Right.
And to some degree, it's like rejecting, and this is what we're going to talk about. Like, I love, Ed gives a very passionate speech about, you tell yourself that's the last sofa you will ever need. Anything else happens, I have that sofa. I was close to being complete.
Yeah, I love that. Close to being complete. Aren't we all?
I would never have articulated it that way, but there are times like, Karen and I are doing some remodeling in our patio right now, and there's that feeling of, I'm going to get this right. And then I never have to think about this again because I will have gotten this thing right.
I'll be complete. Yes, I know.
And it's so sad. And of course, Tyler's response is, do you know what a duvet is? Why should guys like us know what a duvet is?
Which is the first time I ever heard that term.
Oh, really?
I never knew what a duvet was.
I knew what a duvet
in 1999. I was like, what is that? Oh, is that what that's called?
And we go into this thing about products, how we define ourselves as consumers with Rogaine and Viagra, Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
Fuck
Martha Stewart.
and here's the answer is I say never be complete. Stop being perfect. Let's evolve and let the chips fall where they may. It's interesting, and he is so seductive in what he's saying.
Steve, you're a smart guy about this. Is this the id, the super ego, or the ego? What is Tyler Durden?
It'd be more the id, but
does he have ego characteristics mixed into the id?
Yeah, I mean, and really, it's like Freud came up with these terms. They're not really scientific terms. They are. This is the beginning of psychoanalysis. But yeah, he's more the id. He's certainly the more emotional drive.
Yeah.
But he's also a brilliant genius, and
well, because Edward Norton is genius, because he's a smart guy. So
absolutely. And one of my favorite lines, by the way, which I do really think is true: the things you own end up owning you.
Yep.
Tyler Durden is not a good person, and I don't think in the long run he does good things. But that is a really important sentence that we need to think about.
Most revolutionary people are revolutionary because they unlock certain things that we had accepted as facts, and they unlock the hidden truth of those facts underneath it.
Yeah.
And that's what that is. But most revolutionaries also take it too far. And so, unfortunately, that's the exchange throughout history. That's always been the exchange.
And the thing is that the things that you own end up owing you is true on so many levels, because it's, first of all, on just a financial level, most people in the United States buy a lot of what they buy through credit cards.
Yeah.
And credit cards put you in debt. It's a terrible kind of debt. And you spend your life paying back credit card debt. And so in that sense, literally the thing you buy owns you.
Yeah.
But then in another sense is that the quest to collect consumer goods, drives us in so many ways. And I'm sure you've had this experience where you fantasize about, I'm so excited to get this thing. It's the new TV or the new car or the new whatever it is. And you get it, and you get such a high for a week.
Yeah.
And after that week or 2 weeks, or maybe it's even a month, then it's just your thing. And your brain is already on, man, if I could only get this other thing.
Yeah.
And you are owned both by the possession that you're in debt for that you already bought and the possession that you desire, because that is what's driving you forward. And there are some things that I have purchased that have given me lasting happiness, but most of them actually don't.
Right. Well, you could even strip it on down, Steve, to the most basic thing. You own your body, but as much as your mind wants to do all these things, your body owns you. And you can only do so much.
Yeah. Well, we got to go back to Lawrence of Arabia and I can't want what I want.
Yes.
Good Still one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
They've finished their beers. They've headed out. Guess these guys are going to say goodbye. Ed does this sort of, I guess I got to find a hotel.
What?
What?
A hotel.
Yeah.
Just ask, man.
I love this moment.
Yeah.
And because and I love even he says, what are you talking about? And Tyler Durden's like 3 pitchers of beer and you still can't ask. You called me because you need a place to stay. Just ask.
Would that be a problem?
Is it a problem for you to ask?
And then he asks, can I stay at your place? Sure.
Yeah.
That's a great moment in terms of how humans interact. It's very hard for us to just say straight up.
Right.
But I mean, to be fair,
it's two sides of the man, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be imposing.
Yeah.
It's just fucking ask. It's not a big deal. Just do it. But you create it in your head that you're being imposing, and I'm telling you, you don't need to.
Well, of course, what's funny about this situation is, in one perspective, literally a guy you just met.
Yes.
You don't know this guy at all. And to ask to come crash at the guy's house who you just met tonight is really weird. On the other hand, it's your house. You already bought it. You already live there.
Right. But the symbolism of this moment is also he is asking Tyler to live in his so he is now, as the narrator, going to let Tyler drive the car.
Right.
And that's what he's saying. I want to stay at your house, which means I want Tyler to be in control of me right now.
Yeah, because he was 70% narrator, 30% Tyler Durden, and the narrator had an apartment and had all this stuff, and now he has destroyed the narrator's life so he can finally go into this other world. But we have one more favorite ask.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Yeah, man.
And of course, at this moment, which is in the trailers, and is really, this movie is called Fight Club. This is what the movie's about. What do? We cut away.
Let me tell you a little bit about Tyler Durden.
And again, we go into this montage. The montage, by the way, starts with a penis.
Yep.
One of these interstitial things pops up, subliminal penis for a couple of seconds. Here's another thing that's funny about this movie. So as you know, movies go through a quality control process where there's other people other than directors and editors who are going to watch the film and make sure there's no important errors. They flagged all the Tyler appearances, the penises, the cigarette burns, and said, excuse me, you got some issues. You need to fix these things.
Of course.
Because they didn't get what was happening. And we find out about that Tyler worked as a projectionist, and find out about switching wheels and the cigarette burn, which is that dot in the corner.
You look for it, you can see these little dots come into the upper right-hand corner of the screen.
In the industry, we call them cigarette burns.
Did you know about the cigarette burn?
I did not until this movie.
I went to film school, and I really didn't know that was called a cigarette burn. And since then, of course, I notice it in every film when it pops by.
Or the hair.
Yeah. And it gives him other opportunities, which is apparently cutting in pornographic material into the middle of family films. Right. And the reaction and we see it happening in the audience, and the reaction that goes through the audience is hilarious.
Yes.
The man and a woman look at each other, a girl starts crying.
But it's also the first glimpse into his the possible negative effects of Tyler Durden, because the little girl cried.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is not a cool thing to do.
It's funny to him, but it's not cool. You may have damaged this little girl psychologically for a while.
That's exactly the right point. It's funny to him. Well, because to him, I've discovered that all of these social conventions are bullshit.
Yeah.
Therefore, I will tear them all down.
Yeah. And I'll make everybody else pay for it.
And the other interesting thing that happens, we've had Ed Norton narrating this film through voiceover the whole time.
Yeah.
Now he's talking directly to camera.
Yeah.
And now not only that, but the person he's talking about also turns around and talks to camera.
Yeah.
That is so weird in film. And yet, because Fincher is so brilliant and because the editor is so brilliant, we don't pause at all.
And because the film is perfectly constructed for you to accept that happening at that moment, up to that point.
And it's tearing down film conventions in a way that's making you're not aware that you're watching a movie exactly, but it's like, this is a movie, And then we go to a banquet, and Tyler is peeing in a tureen. And I love, yes. So for those of you not watching on the video feed of this, which there's none, Roka just poured out a glass of water, which is my favorite moment to help, because he can't pee with someone watching.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
I can't either.
Yeah. Don't order the cream of mushroom soup, by the way. Just stay away from it.
You get the point. That was great. You get the point.
And now we're back to hitting me as hard as you can.
Why? Why? I don't know why. I don't know. Never been in a fight. You?
No, but that's a good thing.
No, it is not. How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight.
I know you've been in fights.
Yeah, not for a very long time. Physical fights, not for a very long time.
The only fight I was really in was when I was 9.
Wow, what? 9?
I've broken up a bunch of fights.
Sure.
But breaking up a fight isn't the same thing.
And you've actually fought in your classes.
I've sparred a ton.
Right.
And it's an interesting, so I'll tell you, I'll make this digression as quickly as possible, but it was a profound thing for me. So I was doing Kung Fu, and I couldn't do this one kick, which is like a jumping, spinning wheel kick. It was really hard, and I'm a big guy, and I just couldn't do it. And my instructor said to me, Steve, you have to use reckless abandon. And the reason is to do this kick, you couldn't do it halfway.
Right.
Is that you had to throw your whole body into it with everything you had, or because you had to jump up and spin completely around and get your kick up in the air. And I was kind of trying to do it halfway because I didn't want to get hurt.
Right.
And so he said reckless abandon, and I went, okay, sensei. And I did it, and it was awesome. And so reckless abandon became a thing that I really tried to, reckless abandon. Don't try to protect yourself. So then one day, this guy I did martial arts with, Jeff, who I'd done forever, we're throwing punches at each other and practicing some block. And we had done this for a long time. And so we were doing it the way we always did it. And same Sensei Eric, said, okay, guys, reckless abandon, which meant really try to punch each other as hard as you can.
Jeez.
So we really did it, and it was great. And we didn't hurt each other. I mean, we had bruises on our arms because that's going to happen. But it was like, oh, wow, I can really block this hardest punch possible. He's not going to pull it. So then we're in a belt test. And I think Jeff was testing for like his 2nd degree brown belt, and I was testing for my first or whatever. And at the end of the class, we're sparring. Now, he and I had sparred hundreds of times.
Yeah.
So we were doing the same little dance that we always did. We knew each other's moves and it was fun. And then Eric said, reckless abandon, which meant try to hurt each other.
Oof.
And we did, because it was a belt test.
Yeah.
And we went at each other just full on.
Wow.
And neither of us got hit. Both of us had bruises all up and down our arms, our shoulders, our legs because of all the blocks. And it lasted somewhere between 30 seconds and forever. I have no sense of the time just extended.
Right.
And we stopped, and it was one of those amazing experiences. And so I relate. I haven't been to Fight Club, but I understand this idea of putting yourself in the situation where there's not safety, and what's going to happen.
Well, that's why the film works, man, because because men are built of, I think, of course you can find variances, but men are essentially built either intelligent people who have no interest in physical anything, and people who are built in the physical to appreciate the physical or use the physical or find some kind of value in the physical. And that's I think that's an intrinsic thing. I don't think that's a learned thing at all. I think it's something you're born with or not born with. My brother, no physical at all. Very cerebral guy, super intelligent guy, hated doing anything physical, really did not like confrontation in terms of physical confrontation. Me, for whatever reason, I had an affinity for it since I was a younger kid, or since I was a baby maybe, and I've always, I got my ass kicked for so long that eventually it became a switch that I understood power and value through this. Right. And so I've never I haven't gotten into fights since maybe 1992, 1993, but physically I've always been ready just in case. And so that's the thing that I find value in. But I never want to be a mongoloid, so the development of my mind is also important to me as well. So you see in this movie, that's what I think the movie does, at least for me, speaking for myself personally, and I hear your story, it is the physical thing the primal physical thing that I connect to.
Well, and it's funny because I'm essentially a pacifist. I'm not quite a pacifist. I certainly believe in, defense and there are times when violence is necessary for various reasons, but I don't believe in violence as solving problems for the most part. I would believe in avoiding it, but I love roughhousing on every level. Like I love wrestling and sparring and, all that stuff. That's a big part of me. Yeah. And I would say, I don't need to there are certainly, I would say, whatever this thing is that you're describing, far more men than women have it.
Yes.
But there are women who have it.
Absolutely.
And men who don't.
Yes.
And one of the things is in that is a real thing. And again, we get into this idea of toxicity. When taken to extremes, it is terrible.
Right.
But it also is something that's not wrong in and of itself when done in the way that, little kids want to, just like puppies need to play and wrestle and bite each other.
Right.
Sometimes little boys need to roughhouse. And sometimes, like my son, that gets shut down because at school there's kind of a zero tolerance for being physical, and so he feels sometimes when he and another boy are wrestling around and they're giggling and smiling, and the teachers pull them apart and make them apologize because you're not allowed to be physical at the school, and so now he feels like he's bad for having this part of himself, and I don't like that.
Right.
It's like, because I wrestle with him all the time and we laugh and giggle and throw each other around. It's fun. And that's part of what is in us that we like.
Yeah.
But for Brad Pitt and Ed Norton, they've never been in a fight before. So he wants him to hit it in hard as can. I love that it's like, in the face, in the stomach. Oh, surprise me.
Yeah.
And this moment, like, really? And then Ed Norton hauls off and hits him with the lamest looking punch right in the ear.
Motherfucker! You hit me in the ear!
You've been in the ear?
Yes.
Hurts like crazy. Ears are really sensitive.
Then you go numb a little bit.
And there's sort of this like, oh, I'm sorry. And he's like, no, it was perfect. And then Brad Pitt punches it right in the chest.
Oh! Ah!
And then...
That really hurts. Right. Hit me again.
And they start fighting.
Yeah.
Which, of course, never happened.
No, he's fighting himself. He
was at some bar... and he walked outside and decided to punch himself in the ear, maybe.
Right.
That is so weird. It is a very strange thing to imagine. And then after they're laughing, say we should do it again sometime. We walk home. We ask, where's the car, which is the one he stole.
He's like, what car?
So we have no idea what actually happened with that car.
Yep.
We show up at Tyler's house. This is a great set. It is, I think it was shot in like outside of somewhere like Cincinnati or something. Because the exterior and the interior is all built on sets.
Okay.
It is amazing.
Yep.
Everything is falling apart, water everywhere, plaster falling. It is brown. All the water is brown. It is a disgusting, disgusting place.
Yeah. He's in Tyler's mind. That's Tyler's house.
Yeah.
And so the house has to look that way because that's how Tyler feels about the world. There's no, cable or any of that. Wi-Fi, none of that. It's all a dingy house.
Well, Wi-Fi didn't exist.
Basic. Well, yeah, good point. So...
But it's also
dial-up. There's no dial-up. Dial-up existed back then.
Dial-up certainly existed.
I had dial-up back then.
What's interesting, of course, is as we said before, we don't know what this house looked like because all of these people are unreliable. We don't actually know what the house was. Because you're right, it could just be Tyler's mind.
It's a reflection of his mind, yeah.
Then we go back to our next fight, and two guys are kind of watching them. We're at work, and the boss, he kind of makes eye contact with the boss of the urinal. He's got the black eye. We go back to the house. We see that they have to kill the power when it rains. We have more guys fighting, and finally someone volunteers. Can I be next? And now we see it's starting to spread.
Right.
They're hitting golf balls in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. And they talk about at night alone for half a mile in every direction. We're not alone very much in our world.
No.
And now we find, while Tyler is riding his bike through the house, we find this article about organs talking about themselves in the first person.
Right.
I am Jack's medulla oblongata. I am Jill's nipples.
Jill's nipples.
Or Jill's nipple. I'm Jack's colon. Which apparently is based on some real Reader's Digest article.
Oh, yeah.
Hilarious. And by the way, in the script, because you have to give characters a name, the narrator's name is Jack. And so there's places where people refer to this person as Jack, although he doesn't actually have a name.
Right.
Back at work, he talks about how everything, when you're fighting like this, it just turns the volume down on everything else, which is exactly what happens. When his boss is assigning him something, we can't really hear what he's saying. Yeah. And I love that when he puts the files down, we hear the sound of dripping water. And we're back in to the house where Tyler is taking a bath.
Yep.
And they're having a conversation, as you do.
They're bonding.
Yeah. And they ask,
if you could fight anyone, who would you fight?
Fight my boss, probably.
Really?
Yeah, why? Who'd you fight?
Fight my dad.
I don't know my dad.
And now we get right into this thing of, I didn't really know my dad. And we hear that, Ed Norton's dad started new families all the time, like franchises.
Fucker set up franchises.
Yeah. And then Tyler tells the story of,
my dad never went to college, so it's real important that I go.
That sounds familiar.
Why? Because they have the same dad.
Exactly.
Now what do I do? Get a job. Same here. Now what? Get married.
You can't get married. I'm a 30-year-old boy.
And I can't hear if he says, I can't get married, we can't get married, you can't get married. You can't really hear it. He says something, and then he says, I'm a 30-year-old boy. So this came out in 99. I was 30.
Yeah.
So this is like...
Well, it's a statement about...
And at the time, I'm a guy out of film school who had these dreams of being a big director, and I was doing DVD quality control.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Steve? That's the brilliance of this film, I think, in my opinion, the societal comments it's making about men, too, the new man. Like he says in that scene...
We're a generation of men raised by women. I'm wondering if another woman is really the answer we need.
It's a powerful statement there. And he's saying that this is the situation with which we find ourselves because these guys we've been coddled or catered to, had our needs met, so much so that now we're boys. We never got to be men because our fathers dealt with all kinds of other shit that they had to go through. And yes, they were repressed emotionally. They were repressed in many ways. They couldn't speak couldn't speak knowledgeably maybe about what was happening psychologically, which really messed up a bunch of the kids growing up. So you can explore all of this, and yes, there's a positive that we're all able to talk about our feelings now. But by the side token, we've all also stayed boys for a majority of our lives. So it's fascinating.
And generations before they could fix the electricity, repair the car, and do all this stuff that most of us can't really do. I mean,
it's hunter-gatherer sense.
Yeah, I mean, we have become more and more specialized, more and more isolated, and. Yeah, it's an interesting, and this, because one of the things this movie is about is what does it mean to be a man?
Right.
And of course, my opinion is that it can mean a whole bunch of different stuff to a whole bunch of different people.
Sure.
But certainly at this time in my life, when I was 30 and feeling like a complete failure,
Yeah.
And not doing the things I had dreamt of doing. And we get to this movie and I'm like, man, this is me. It felt a lot like me. I'm a 30-year-old child.
Yeah.
Interesting. And we keep going. Most of the week, they're Ozzy and Harriet. They've worked out a pretty good relationship.
That's great. Bromance.
But every Saturday night, we were learning something new. And he's not really worrying about that condo anymore. We're off at work and there's a meeting and guys, he's asking, of course, if he can get something in cornflower blue. and one of the other guys at the meeting kind of says something to Ed Norton, who just like smiles his bloody teeth at him. It's so gross and disturbing.
Yeah.
And now it's time for Fight Club to start.
It was right in everyone's face. Tyler and I just made it visible. It was on the tip of everyone's tongue. Tyler and I just gave it a name.
And they come into the bar. It really reminds me, by the way, of going into the Coca Cabana and Goodfellas.
Good point.
It's a steady cam shot coming into the bar, and the camera's kind of panning around as this momentum builds, and this huge crowd goes down into the basement, and we go right into the speech.
Yeah.
Welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
We're breaking it right now. We're breaking the rule by talking about it. So,
well, this is the thing about the first rule about Fight Club is clearly everybody's breaking the rule.
Yeah,
thing spreads like wildfire.
Which he says later on. Yeah,
I mean, and the biggest person breaking the rule is Tyler Durden.
It's Tyler Durden.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not a bad set of rules. I think that, and it's the most interesting rule to me is
if this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight.
Yeah.
And we kind of hear about like this guy Ricky from work, who's this quiet person, but he's a god when he beats up this maitre d'.
Couldn't figure out if you said black pens or blue pens, but he was a god when he beat up the local maitre d'. Yeah.
And now we're back at work and we see Ricky and there's that eye contact. And then we see the maitre d' and there's that eye contact. And what Ed says, which is interesting, is like, I couldn't talk to them in this circumstances.
Yeah.
They're not the same person as they were there. If you could fight any celebrity, and Tyler Durden's answer is Hemingway, which is a good choice.
Yeah, sure.
And Ed Norton's Shatner is Shatner.
William Shatner.
I'd fight William Shatner.
Yeah.
I love that moment so much in the movie.
Great.
Oh my God.
It's true. Shatner would be a good fight in his
particularly in his prime.
Yeah.
He's got that big jump kick.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to stay away from that.
Yeah.
I hope that if you could have a fantasy fight with William Shatner, that music would play.
Absolutely.
We all started seeing things differently. Everywhere we went, we were sizing things up.
And you could see them doing that in the frame. And this is one of the just important filmmaking thing is that what's happening throughout this movie is that the video is reinforcing what we're hearing. Is that part of why the voiceover works is it's always dynamic. It's never just telling you something. It's making you think about things. It's making you observe the video in a different way. Yeah. And one of the things they observe is on this bus that they're on is like a Gucci or something, Calvin Klein ad or something.
Yeah.
With a beautiful man with ripped abs. To which Tyler's response is that what a man's supposed to look like? Which is funny to me because in the next scene, we're going to see Brad Pitt with some perfect abs.
Some incredible abs, yeah.
But at this moment, he says self-improvement is masturbation. And then he says, now self-destruction, but does not finish the sentence.
Right.
What is self-destruction?
It's the opposite of what he was saying with
Well, if self-improvement is masturbation, well, the opposite of masturbation, one would think, is sex. Or is it? I mean, what is the opposite of masturbation?
Interesting. Well, masturbation is pleasure. So to me...
But it's pleasure just for yourself that serves no...
Sure.
It doesn't procreate. It doesn't create a purpose.
Which is what self-improvement is, right?
That's what he's saying.
Self-destruction is the removal of that pleasure. So you're exploring, you're going... Once again, because Tyler's whole point of the whole movie is to get to the bottom.
Well, and to feel pain.
To feel
that
pain.
Pain
right.
is real. So it's funny because I interpret it totally differently, but I like yours too. So your interpretation is masturbation is pleasure, destruction is pain.
Yep.
And therefore destruction is going, that's how it's going in the opposite direction because it's exploring pain rather than pleasure.
It takes more effort to do pain than it does.
And what I was thinking was masturbation is not productive where sex is procreation.
Yeah.
So masturbation serves no purpose, whereas self-destruction is creation.
Sure.
Because he wants to destroy the world to create the new world.
Cool.
And of course, who knows?
Yeah.
We're back in a fight. And this is where we see Brad Pitt in all his ab glory.
God damn, he looks great.
Yeah. Just wiping a guy out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ed goes out and loses a fight. But even as he loses the fight, he looks at all the blood on the floor.
When the fight was over, nothing was solved, but nothing mattered.
Cool.
I do get that. There have been I've had some particularly intense sparring experiences where time just stops, and there's just this feeling of, in the zone, in that moment.
I have it sometimes with verbal confrontations. Sometimes with a verbal confront, when it's done, I'm like satisfied. It's weird. It's a very weird thing. I don't seek to pick them. When I was younger, fuck yeah, I did, because I had a lot of insecurity I was working out, self-esteem issues I was working out. But now when there's an honest debate or difference of opinion that escalates to a confrontation verbally, when it's over, I almost feel a little bit of satisfaction, like Ed does staring at the blood on the ground, because ideas were exchanged and received on both sides. Those are the ones that I feel the best about, not just fighting to fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes Tyler spoke for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another clue.
Yeah, where he's getting the stitches, and then he says what Tyler says. We're now to get the one you talked about, historical figure.
Yeah,
Gandhi and Lincoln.
Gandhi's such a great choice.
The thing is, Lincoln would be a tough fight.
Yeah, when he says skinny guys will fight till they're burger, that's a great line.
Yeah,
or skinny guys, right? Or thin guys, he says. Yeah.
Phone rings. It's Marla.
Yeah.
I like that Brad is practicing.
Wait, who would you fight if you could fight one historical figure? Who would you fight?
Who would I fight? I don't know. I don't have an answer right now.
All right,
I'll keep thinking about it.
Right.
Do you have an answer?
Elvis is my choice. Elvis Presley in his prime. Yeah.
Nice. Interesting.
Nice country boy. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what is my agenda. Like, I totally understand the Shatner. Like, Shatner is such a good answer.
Yeah, it is.
But I would never fight Gandhi because he's this tiny little pacifist.
Yeah, but he's a scrappy son of a bitch. I imagine Gandhi's because he was a lawyer. He's a scrappy son of a bitch. He'll talk you into circles while he's kicking your ass.
No, but he would just say, "I will not resist," and then,
he'll fucking do
he's gonna
move
duck and
around
weave
like the Matrix and shit. Yeah.
Now I'm picturing Gandhi taking his robes. I forget what the name of that cloth that he wears, and just like wrapping you, tying you up in it, and standing on top of you. All right, we've digressed. Marla's calling. Brad's practicing with nunchucks in the background. And Marla's like, where have you been? You haven't come to any of the support groups because she's been cheating.
Yeah. And apparently for weeks he hasn't been going because he's been caught up with Tyler.
Yeah, who knows? And now she reveals that she's taken a bunch of Xanax, and she says,
"This isn't a for real suicide thing. This is probably one of those cry for help things."
This could go on for hours.
So you're staying in tonight then?
Do you want to wait and hear me describe that?
Then we hear there's this sort of sex sounds and essentially bullet time going around them in this weird sex scene.
Yeah, it goes to black, and then it's this weird sex scene because he lays the phone down and walks away from it, which is interesting because he's obviously laying the phone down because Edward Norton is disappearing, the narrator's disappearing, and now Tyler Durden is taking control of his mind.
Right.
Which is why he goes to black. It's a switch.
Because what happened is Tyler Durden was on the phone and went to get her, which we're going to see, and pick her up, and then they had crazy sex.
Yeah, they did.
By the way, so the sex was, they literally done like bullet time with like still cameras and stuff, and it was Brad Pitt and Helena Bonham Carter. She says it's not her real breast, by the way.
Oh, no.
And that they had dots all over them, and they literally, it was like 2 days of just posing. It was like the most non-sexy sex scene ever made, and they described it as Fincher sex.
Yeah, well, it's hot sex, that's for sure.
It is.
Even if it's not her breast, it's still hot sex.
And Ed wakes up and walks through the room, sees Tyler's door is never closed, condoms in the toilet, a lot of them.
Yeah, 4 of them.
And then he hears someone coming. He says, "Oh, you won't believe this dream I had last night."
Yeah, I can hardly believe anything about last night.
And he just immediately is, "What are you doing here?" And her reaction is,
"Right.
What do you mean?
This is my house. What are you doing in my house?"
She says, "Fuck you," and she leaves. Yeah. You gotta feel bad for Marla watching this movie a second time.
I don't know if I feel bad. She's just as messed up as he is.
She is not as messed up as he is. He has
in different ways.
Different person.
She's trying to kill herself.
Sure.
So with Xanax, she's stealing people's clothes and selling them. She has her own sins.
No question.
I would say. So,
but she's dealing with this person who literally is.
She chose this guy though.
But she doesn't know he's two people.
No. As soon as he shows it though, she doesn't run away.
Oh yeah,
She
no,
sticks
she
around.
keeps coming back
All
for
right,
this
then,
guy.
then my
that is
sympathy
abusive.
is done. If you stick around, my sympathy is done for you. You're going on the journey.
I just
and
have
I'm
more
enjoying
sympathy
it.
in my heart than you.
It's
I
true.
guess.
There you go.
Because now Tyler
Maybe
comes.
I've dated some Marlas in my time as well.
I
So go ahead.
suppose. I suppose. Yeah, I haven't had that experience. Tyler comes in. And his first response is, "You got some fucked up friends."
Yeah, that's a great line.
Limber though.
Yeah, limber though.
What's so funny about this movie, by the way, is that the narrator has had sex with Marla and doesn't know it.
Nope.
And is jealous of his friend having sex with Marla, which is actually him.
Yeah.
That is, I can feel sad for the narrator. It's like, oh, if only you could remember, then you know, but he can't. And now we go back in time. We see, and this is really the only Tyler on his own scene. Ed Norton is in basically almost every scene in the entire movie.
It's true.
And he goes off and he goes to see Marla. It is a really funny scene as she kind of drugged up, falling on the floor. Someone's called an ambulance. They get out of the place. They're kind of hiding and doing. Brad Pitt does a weird little dance as the ambulance guys are going by. And then Marla starts yelling out, oh, she's really messed up about herself as they escape. We get back to the house and she says,
If I fall asleep, I'm done for. You're gonna have to keep me up all night.
By the way, this time watching it, the way he yanks her around the stairs when they're leaving her apartment building, very narrator-esque. And so it didn't feel as cool as Tyler.
Oh, that's
so that's, I thought, there's a one rare moments where you see Edward Norton coming out of Brad Pitt. So
because what actually happened is Ed Norton showed up and took her back to the house and then had sex with her. And then when she saw him 20 minutes later, he said, get the fuck out of my house.
Right.
And I love now Tyler's talking to the narrator and says,
the shit that came out of this woman's mouth I ain't never heard.
My God. I haven't been fucked like that since grade school.
there was an even worse line that's from the book that the studio wouldn't accept and they had to take it out, which is, I want you to make me pregnant. I want to give birth to your abortion.
Oh my God.
So I think they made the right choice in taking that out.
No less unsettling, though.
No, it's a horrible, horrible line.
Yeah.
And Tyler basically says to Ed, you can't talk to her about me. If you say anything about me, I'm done.
Which is, of course, that self-protective feature of your other personality. You can't reveal me to her. She'll know you're insane, and then you'll expose us.
And then we have a whole bunch of scenes where a montage where they're having sex and the plaster's falling down on them and all this terrible things happening. By the way, one of the weird jobs as an actor is for something like this, you have to do ADR, which is where you go into a little booth and make a recording. Well, they had to do all sorts of orgasm sounds, loud ones, quiet ones. And so you're sitting there with technicians and recording and the director, and they're giving you like, no, now give me one like this, now one like this. And it was like an all day orgasm noise day.
I did that for a book on tape that I recorded.
Orgasms?
Yeah, orgasm sounds.
It's weird.
But everyone's in on it, so you're all laughing
Oh,
together
no, it's
about it.
hilarious.
So but it is a weird experience.
And at one point he peeks through the door and there's Brad wearing rubber gloves, which is his idea, by the way.
Well, no, but this is, wait, I don't want to skip over this, Steve, real quick, because I know it's when he walks by the door and Brad Pitt opens the door, right? That's obviously in his mind, the narrator is trying to see what Tyler Durden is doing.
Yes.
And Tyler shuts him down.
Yes.
It's so simple. The door of the mind of the door of the mind opening, and he shuts the door on him.
He's keeping things separate.
Yes.
Well, and this is the weird, one of the interesting things about Tyler Durden is Tyler Durden knows that there's a split personality.
Oh, yeah. He's aware of it completely.
Yeah. And this other guy doesn't.
Right.
You know.
Because Tyler is created where this other guy is the actual person.
Well, but this is the thing. Is like, is there an actual person?
Yes.
I think they're both him.
What do you mean? Do you think they're both him?
There isn't one real person and one fake person. I mean, if you behave like, I mean,
oh no, but Tyler was created later.
Absolutely,
in his life.
Tyler
who
came into existence.
Who he is,
but like the things that Tyler says and does, they'll come from him.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Yeah. But it's, I mean, I'm not more in control.
I'm not an expert on psychiatry, but
I play one on TV.
But I play one on the Cine-Files. We're back at work.
Is that your blood?
Some of it, yeah.
And now he's just aggressively throwing it at people.
Yeah.
And he gets home and he gets a call from the detective.
Yeah.
Ends up that his apartment was dynamited. And he's starting to ask questions about him. And there's Tyler there sort of whispering him, trying to make him say things. And he gives a very impassioned, that condo was my life. I love every single stick of furniture.
That was not just a bunch of stuff that got destroyed. It was me.
Which is so interesting.
Which is true.
It is true. Well, it is the version of him
symbolic.
he's trying to destroy.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And then Tyler says, tell him you blew it up. That's what they want to hear. And now we've gotten to this thing of, he might be a suspect.
Once again, telling him that you blow it up is a self-destructive thing.
And then of course we were seeing Tyler and Marla, and we hear, except for the condom, Tyler and Marla were never in the same room, which is actually not true. Is that he's Tyler?
Yeah.
So every time they're always in the same room,
right?
When he's there, and then there's just a beautiful bit of poetic writing in language, which is,
The condom is the glass slipper of our generation. You slip one on when you meet a stranger. You dance all night. Then you throw it away. The condom, not the stranger.
and then we go into this dress that she's wearing that she got at a thrift shop for $1, and that it was a bridesmaid dress, and someone loved it for one day and then tossed it like a Christmas tree. We have the condom, loved and tossed, the dress, loved and tossed, the Christmas tree, loved and tossed, and then she grabs him by the crotch.
Yeah.
And she's trying to connect with this guy who she's having sex with all the time, and he just rejects her.
Well, this is the incredible gift of this movie, dude. It starts out as something and it becomes a love story.
Yeah.
It's a fucked up love story.
Very much so.
But it's a love story.
Yeah.
And that's, if you've watched this film and you haven't caught that it's a love story, here's a new way to look at it. It's absolutely a love story.
And love saves the day.
Yes.
I mean, the
In the
thing
end.
that is in the end going to make him stand up to Tyler is going to be her.
Marla, yeah.
Yeah. So she's grabbed him by the crotch. He's rude. And then there's Brad Tyler who says, get rid of her. And he's like, no, you get rid of her. And again, Tyler's like, don't mention me. And his response is,
I'm 6 years old again, passing messages between parents.
the dad issues and mom issues that are going on with this person are big.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. We don't ever deal with them. We don't know what they were, but they're big.
Well, it's clearly symbolic that he had an overly masculine father and a very feminine mom.
Yeah.
You can see that.
And after Marla's gone, Tyler says, well, we can say one thing about Marla, at least she's trying to hit bottom.
Yeah.
This thing about hitting bottom is a really big deal. And of course, it's a term that comes from AA.
Yep.
Because only once you hit bottom can you start to go into recovery, whatever that means in this weird context. Tonight, we make soap.
Yeah.
We head over to this barbed wire, we hide from some guards, and we get to the best soap comes from humans. We're at a liposuction clinic. Now, I don't know if they have big plastic see-through bags of fat in dumpsters, but man, is this gross.
Yeah, it's gross.
And in particular, throwing that thing over, it gets caught on the barbed wire, it drips. I mean, it is nasty.
Yep.
Now we're back to rendering fat, and which like I said, I think is symbolic throughout the film.
Yep.
And he kind of talks about this whole thing about ancient people and ash, and that's how they discovered lye. And then he takes Ed Norton's hand and he kisses it.
What is this?
This is a chemical burn.
And pours lye on his hand.
Yeah, man.
This is an amazing scene. In all sorts of, I mean, the performances are great. The way it's filmed is great. The language is great.
The desperation.
Yeah. And Ed first tries to go to meditation.
Stay with the pain. Don't shut this out.
Tyler's like, no.
Yeah.
Stay with the pain.
Right.
Without pain, without sacrifice, we would have nothing.
I tried not to think of the word serum or flesh.
Stop it! This is your pain. This is your burning hand. It's right here.
I'm going to my cave. I'm going to my cave. I'm going to find my power animal.
No! Don't deal with it the way those dead people do.
Again, it's a rejection of that support group.
What you're feeling is premature enlightenment.
Which sounds like premature ejaculation, and again, we're a relation to masturbation and destruction and sex and all those things.
Our fathers were our models for God. If our fathers bailed, what does that tell you about God?
No, I don't.
Listen to me. You have to consider the possibility that God does not like you, never wanted you. In all probability, he hates you.
Some good stuff.
Yeah.
And in the end, what he's saying is, you have to accept the pain. Once you accept the pain, then I'll pour vinegar on it and it'll stop.
Well, what's the greatest thing? Like, whenever everybody goes through anything, any sense of loss or any kind of like heartbreak or whatever, in any form, everyone goes, God, I just want to get through this so I can be over it. I just want to get through the pain. And people numb it. People try to escape it. People try to have sex with a bunch of people so they can forget about the person. But the only way out is through. And sometimes going through, yeah, you may need to meditate, everyone, but you gotta feel it.
Yep.
Because the only way out is to feel it and then climb back out of it. And that's what, in essence, he's trying to tell him. You need to, by pouring him, he's making him confront his life, making him like feel what's happening in his life. And in a messed up way, he's trying to guide him out of it and saying all these things to him so that he will, like sit there in the pain. Leslie does, our friend Leslie, she does life coaching, and she says sometimes sitting in the unknown is the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the most necessary thing you can do. And that's the unknown for him is the pain.
Well, this is this theme throughout this movie.
Yeah.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Right.
You have to hit bottom.
Great point.
This is that the movie is saying all these things you're holding onto are trapping you.
Yeah.
Your stuff is owning you. We must destroy all of it in order to get to some truth.
Yeah.
Of course, what that truth is, this is where this movie is really fraught with a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
And also there's this great moment where Ed Norton's character says, "You don't know how this feels." And he shows him his own hand with his own scar.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
Now, here's the thing about this. He only scarred one of his hands.
Right.
And he did it by himself. So in this moment, he's looking to the imaginary person who has already done it.
Yeah.
And only one of those is real.
Right.
But finally, he kind of relaxes into it to some degree, gets the vinegar poured on him.
Congratulations. You're one step closer to hitting bottom.
But what exactly, in this context, does hitting bottom mean?
Was I asleep? Had I slept?
Let go! Okay. You are now firing a gun at your imaginary friend near 400 gallons of nitroglycerin!
The Cine-Files will return in 1 week with part 2 of Fight Club.